South Africa is in what I would definitely say is an extraordinarily beautiful place to be in musically. I say beautiful to kind of try and articulate what I feel when I see the young artists that are taking the opportunity to express themselves in ways that truly depict a reverence for the past that is coupled with a deep self-awareness. One of those artists for me is definitely Zoë Modiga. She stands at the cusp of what is a globally acknowledged jazz tradition of South African musicians, while still embedding herself in a lineage of South African songwriters, South African vocalists. Her previous album was a definite love letter to the country. This one, nomthandazo, is now an introspective look into the mind of her own experiences. This album feels mellower with a tinge of hope about it. It says, here's an artist that has reached the point in their career that many would hope to reach. The point where she gets to a place where she's acknowledged, she's able to sustain herself, and most importantly, she's able to make a cultural impact. And again, linking back to this idea of self-awareness, Zoë Modiga's songs are very self-referential. She's able to, even when telling stories that are general, weave them back into a context that shows the fact that she's taken a lot of time to think about a lot of things that people her age are struck by. The reality of having to decide what becomes of your life in a country that seems to be increasingly unstable, especially when you're an artist. This album is a dedication to that same creative expression. It is a dedication to the love of family, to the love of friends. It is a dedication, most importantly, to the music in and of itself. It is an ode to the fact that the music has been the essence that has carried her throughout. Now, on a technical level, it's able to still maintain a soothing, warm tone whilst creating a very diverse world to live in. This is definitely the kind of project that you can play on a road trip, just on the way, or in moments of stillness. It has both a movement to it, but it is very stable in the way that it depicts all these beautiful warm tones as she sings. My only backdraw about it would be the songwriting this time is a bit stream of consciousness centered. It is not as structural as the previous album. It seems to kind of meander itself into different places. But I think maybe that is intentional too, because it adds a dreamy aspect to it, making the album as a whole feel very transcendent. And I think it's this transcendence that Zoë Modiga is definitely markedly known for. I mean, even in her performances, she's able to take what music can do and bring that into the context of a spiritual idea. When I say spiritual, she is very intentional about understanding her role as a musician in the context of healing. And ultimately, this is what this project becomes. It becomes yet another serum. It becomes yet another small dose of healing from Zoë Modiga. Now, measuring, grading, and ultimately rating projects like these is very difficult, because my thinking when it comes to the ultimate rating is always based on part the artist's vision, and then the market and context that the artist operates in order for them to understand how to, one, fit in the cultural moment, the atmosphere of the music that comes from artists that are their peers, and therefore the overall position that the album sits on as it engages with its audience. I feel like this album comes at a time that is true to it, and as a result, in that way, it becomes more impactful because of the timing. And I think ultimately, for me, this is definitely a beyond average album. Matter of fact, Zoë Modiga has thus far in her catalog released music that is very much beyond the average. She is making music with a sense of timelessness to it, and this definitely delivers on that, to such an extent that I am confident enough to say this is a solid 8 out of 10. Misses out on the 2 because, again, I think the songwriting could have been done with a bit more brevity in certain parts. That's to say, structurally, some verses could have been shorter, some things could have been said in a way that gets the point across with more accessibility. But again, regarding who she is, how she makes her music, and ultimately the demographic that relates to her, this is a project that is definitely the kind of album that can introduce one into the world of jazz. And that is why Zoe is such an amazing artist. She stands as a doorway between accessibility and niche, and she does it masterfully. And I think, with that being said, artists that are in that position become the most crucial, because with every musical style there are forms of it that are able to relate to a general mass, which stem from a much more specific and curated and stylized version of whatever musical expression that may be, creative expression that may be. So ultimately, it's an 8 out of 10 from me. Shout out to Zoë Modiga for the beautiful, delicate, soothing music. It's VJ, the brother from the ancient mother. You are still locked into the headspace, Africa's most poignant channel.